everybody. I'm just going to give it a minute and then we will get started. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, sorry, we have just gone past 12 o'clock. And welcome to our Leeds Safer Roads Vision Zero 2040 webinar. Just in terms of our housekeeping, so we are recording this session and it will be shared on the YouTube channel. People who aren't panelists won't be able to speak, but you are able to ask questions within the Q&A function of Zoom. And if you have any other comments to make, if you can put them in the chat function as well, please. And I think beyond that, we've got, if there are any other queries that come out of this, if you can contact us on our vision0@leeds.gov.uk email address. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Helen Hayden. She's the Executive Member for Infrastructure and Climate and the Lead Member for Road Safety at Leeds City Council. Councillor Hayden.
Thank you very much, Gillian. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this really important webinar to discuss the Vision Zero 2040. This is to share the content of the draft strategy and inform you as to how you can contribute to the consultation, and we're hoping as many people as possible can contribute, will feel able to contribute to this consultation. And sure that we want people to be able to contribute and make sure that we're getting this right. So recently we took a paper to Leeds Exec Board, Leeds City Council Exec Board, to discuss our Vision Zero 2040, and I also sit on the Vision Zero board with Deputy Mayor and former councillor, Leeds City Council, Alison Lowe, and that board is becoming functional with terms of reference and things, and will be crucial into achieving our aim for 2040 for West Yorkshire and as far as I'm concerned, Leeds being a place where nobody is killed or seriously injured on our roads. So with that, I'm going to a brief overview of the session. We're going to have a background to Vision Zero and where it came from, and then we're going to hear from G Greenwood, who is a brilliant campaigner on these issues, and then we will hear from West Yorkshire Police regarding their role in Vision Zero, and then we will have a look at the strategy itself, and then there will be questions and answers. So I'd like to introduce you to the panelists now, and where they are and their role in this strategy. So if we could go on to the next slide. Right. So in the on the panel we have Gary Bartlett, who's the Chief Officer for Highways and Transportation, Leeds City Council. We've already met Gillian, who's Head of Transport Development Services, Leeds City Council, and Chair of our Leeds Safer Roads Partnership. We've also got Nick Hunt, who is one of Leeds City Council's Traffic Engineering Managers, and we'll be and then Inspector Nick Berry. There's a lot of Nicks involved in this, who is from West Yorkshire Police and Leeds District Partnerships. Also from the police, we have Paul Jeffrey, who deals with the Prosecutions and Casualty Prevention Unit, G Greenwood, who I mentioned earlier, who is our road safety campaigner, Lindsay McGarvey, Principal Transport Planner at Leeds City Council, Daniel Byrne, Health Improvement Principal at Leeds City Council, and Andrew Lee from West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. So really pleased that they could all join us today and be there to answer any questions that you may have at the end. So to provide a background to Vision Zero, as we can see on the screen there, between 2016 and 2020, there were 1,455 collisions on roads in Leeds that resulted in 83 fatalities and nearly 1,500 serious injuries. And that is to drivers, passengers, pedestrians and cyclists or other riders of vehicles such as motorcyclists, etc. So this is a devastating number and it has to stop. In my mind, and it was always in the mind of our now Baroness Blake of Otley, when I remember her saying that there is no number that is acceptable. So no loss of life is acceptable. No serious injury is acceptable. You can't say, oh, we'll be happy with 6 serious injuries next year. The only thing you can have is a zero number. It has to be 0, and that's where we want to, and that's what we want to achieve with this Vision Zero. So we've had good progress made in recent years in terms of road casualties, and this is due to several factors, such as technology, legislation, and changes in attitudes as well over the last 30, 40 years. However, we do know that number of deaths and serious injuries has recently levelled off, and therefore a new approach is required. Again, just reiterate that no one should die or suffer serious injury on the road. It's not acceptable. It is preventable, and that's why I want to take this approach. So Vision Zero is a new and different approach. It's adopted by other cities across the UK and across the world, and Leeds is the first in West Yorkshire to adopt the approach. The responsibility lies with those involved in designing, developing, maintaining, educating about, and enforcing the road systems, not just those who are using it. And there's a clear link to our climate emergency and our wanting to be net carbon neutral by 2030. So creating a road system where people feel safe to walk, cycle or ride. So it supports our vision to be a city where you don't need a car and efforts to reduce carbon emissions. But whilst people do not feel safe to cycle or walk, and including going to school and just going to the shops and things like that, then they're not going to be encouraged and people are not going to leave their cars behind. So it also fits in with our climate ambitions as well. So I'd like to introduce G Greenwood. Some of you may have heard him speak before, and Ian will share his views about why Vision Zero are more important, safe systems is important to him and many others. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ian, and welcome.
Helen, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Hope my mic's on. And somebody can do a thumb up, that'd be really good. You can hear me. I'm really pleased to be with you today, and thank you for the invitation. I'm a road safety campaigner, and I've also recently joined the West Yorkshire Vision Zero board, which I was rather pleased about. And as I said, I'm really pleased to be here today. So the exam question for me is, why is Vision Zero important to me? So if you'd asked me that, rewind a few years back, I'd have gone, what on earth is that? I've no idea what that is. But fast forward to today, I've read a lot about it, and I guess my initial response would be, isn't it obvious? Shouldn't everyone be interested in stopping death and serious injury on our roads? Well, you'd think so, but I'm still not that convinced. People are always shocked when they read about a crash and a death, particularly when it happens locally. But some folk are more focused on getting around quickly, and get angry when they get stuck in traffic. And they're waiting for the ambulance to arrive when there's been a crash, or they're waiting for the road to be cleared. Not many people think about what actually happened or to the poor victims. And I guess it's easier to think about it like that, just not to think at all. And I think, in my view, Vision Zero helps us to think differently, which is really important. I read some of the comments on the online from the consultation, and some people seem to hate the 20-mile-an-hour zones or the speed cameras. And I kind of think, well, aren't these to stop killing people, seriously injuring vulnerable people where they live or near schools? But actually, maybe people think that getting to their destinations 2 minutes quicker is probably better. Or the bloke who says it was only a quick text, officer, after he's taken his eyes off the road for, I don't know how many dozens of feet, or maybe hundreds of feet. So I kind of wonder what people's motivations are. But before I start to sound like I'm going off on one, I should say I drive. I'm also a bus user and a cyclist and a pedestrian. And I don't belong to a particular tribe that shouts at somebody else, which is what they seem to do in London quite a lot these days. I simply want safe roads. Not safer roads, but safe roads for everybody. So why am I interested? So back to the question. Well, for two reasons. I started my career a long time ago now as a children's nurse. I worked in children's trauma units where we saw lots of road crash victims, children needing neurosurgery, with head injuries, with spinal injuries, lots of new disability as a result, and some deaths too, sadly. Later on, I went to run hospitals in my career, so I know what it's like to care for people and their devastated families following a crash. These are mostly preventable. The other more important reason, I guess why I'm here today, is because of my two daughters. People ask me, as I'm sure they do with you if you've got children, so how many have you got? And I go, 2. I always say 2. One is 20 and doing really well, thank you very much. And the other is, she's dead. She was killed in a car crash. And now I know that's hard for people to hear, and I get why conversations fizzle out because people really don't know what to say next. But let me tell you, it's far harder to say it than to hear it. But I will keep saying it because I don't want anybody else to go through the living nightmare that my family have been through over the years, as well as many, many thousands of other families. And Vision Zero, or Safe Systems as I prefer, can help us. So what happened to Alice? Well, October 2008, 5 young lads decided to race each other in 5 cars with 5 passengers in the dark, in the wet. Most of them weren't wearing a seatbelt and at speed. The police estimated that they were going about 70 to 80 miles an hour on a windy country road. One of the drivers missed a bend and his car ended up destroyed, completely crumpled in a tree. But before it hit the tree, he hit the car that my family were traveling in, front on. That night, the driver died. He was 17. His 16-year-old passenger was killed, and so was Alice, my daughter. My other daughter and her mum ended up with very serious injuries and in intensive care. Their mum stayed in hospital for more than 4 months, which gives you an indication just how serious her injuries were. So, as well as knowing the huge impact on the emergency services and the NHS from my work life, I'm afraid I know from personal experience just how tragic a road crash can be. Alice would be a 26-year-old something, who knows what. So I thank Leeds Council and those across West Yorkshire who now want to stop road deaths, serious injuries. Not possible, some people say to me, and I just say right back, utter rubbish. It's already happened in Oslo and Helsinki, and many other places are moving towards it much more quickly than we are. We just simply deserve not to be killed just by using the road. We know what the problem is. More than 30 people are killed and 500 seriously injured every week. Imagine the outcry if that was on a plane or a train. We also know what to do, and Safe Systems or Vision Zero helps us to do that. These are mostly preventable crashes, but we need to want to change things enough to make a real difference. I don't know what your motive for being here today. I don't know how many people are on the call. Maybe you're genuinely interested in stopping these road deaths and serious injuries. Maybe you just want to know more. Maybe you've got some feedback, or maybe you want to have a good old moan about speed management. Whoever you are, you're very likely to have a mum or a dad or a son or a daughter or a partner or a friend or somebody who uses our roads. So let's talk about having a safe system on our roads in Leeds for all of us and work out together what we can do to stop this devastation. To finish, I strongly support Vision Zero. Any other approach says it's okay that we kill people on our roads. If it stops what happened to my daughters happening to others, then we've moved forward. Thank you. Back to Helen.
Thank you so much, Ian. Having lost my 6-year-old niece to cancer 2 years ago, I absolutely get the devastation of losing a child. When you're reasoning with the universe, the fact that was completely unnecessary, that you lost, that Alice was lost to us, that Alice was killed. Whereas you can't read, you know, with cancer, it's not preventable. Childhood cancer is not preventable, but Alice's death was. And so thank you for sharing that, and the pain that you will still, and we can stop that happening to another family. We are fundraising like mad to try and increase childhood cancer research, but we know we can't stop it happening, but we can stop this. And I think that is absolutely essential as to why we're doing it. No number is acceptable. No person, whatever their age, is acceptable that they die on our roads or are seriously injured, as your wife and daughter were. So really, I think this shows that we need to stop making excuses. We need to crack on and get this and get this underway and have that sea change in attitudes, that not safer roads, safe roads, and safe for everyone. So I'd like to hand over to West Yorkshire Police now, who are pivotal and incredibly important to our work on this Vision Zero strategy and implementing it. And I'd like to thank them for their commitment, and just hear from yourself, Sarah, about your commitment to Vision Zero. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here this afternoon, because this represents a milestone in a very long piece of work that I'm proud that West Yorkshire Police have been involved with alongside Leeds City Council. The reality is, if we continue to do what we've always done, it's not unreasonable to expect that we'll get the same results. That means people will continue to die in large numbers, and many other people will continue to suffer life-changing injuries. To actually achieve our ambition that no one will die, we need a new solution, a new approach. Vision Zero is a tried and tested methodology that can be applied in West Yorkshire and Leeds specifically to help us achieve that ambition. West Yorkshire Police as a whole is committed to changing the way we work, the way we share information, the way we collaborate with partners to achieve the best possible outcomes. And that means that already we've revised our delivery strategy, our operational strategy in a number of areas to reflect the systems approach that's enshrined within the Vision Zero methodology. So basically, this is a real opportunity to achieve a step change in our performance in relation to casualty prevention on the roads of West Yorkshire. Of course, as the enforcement body, the police have an ongoing commitment to provide specialist resources to make the roads a safe place for all road users. So we have an ongoing commitment to continue to support the appointment, training and equipping of specialist roads policing officers, traffic officers across the county. We also have a high-speed proactive intercept capability that we will continue to use to deny criminals the use of the roads in West Yorkshire. Inevitably, mistakes happen. It's our job within Vision Zero to make those mistakes less impactful on those involved, to make collisions as a result of human frailty more survivable. But inevitably, we have situations where people at the moment are continuing to be injured. We need to secure the learning from that, and West Yorkshire Police has made a clear commitment to continue the investigative process through our major collision inquiry team to eke out every opportunity to learn and improve systems and processes as a result of those tragedies, whilst we have to endure them. We have made a continued commitment through the West Yorkshire Casualty Prevention Partnership to have a real close look at how we use safety cameras, speed cameras, red light cameras, specifically on the road networks in West Yorkshire. There are real opportunities not just to put those cameras in places of identified high risk, i.e. where somebody's already died, but to work with communities within the framework of guidance that we have, to actually use safety cameras in situations where we've got clear evidence of emerging risk. And that is something that the partnership and West Yorkshire Police are already engaged with the Department for Transport and Home Office in trying to influence the national guidance to which we have to adhere. There's a really important partnership working opportunity with the public of West Yorkshire that I'm extremely proud to be associated with, and that's Operation SNAP. We've already demonstrated the power of the dash cam in that the public now in West Yorkshire routinely submit examples of dangerous and antisocial driver behaviour through our force website, and that is being acted upon to a considerable extent. This year alone, since April 2021, we've had just shy of 4,500 submissions from the public of West Yorkshire. 68% of those have resulted in further action being taken against the perpetrators. And this is a real example of how the public can make a difference in our collective efforts to make the roads safer places. And that will be amplified through additional work that's in the pipeline with national highways on the motorway network. And perhaps we might explore that a little bit later on. I'm going to finish this sort of brief overview by just saying that Vision Zero ambitions really, through that safe systems approach, provide an opportunity to work towards safe mobility on the transport system for everyone and make the communities that we all live in a much safer place than they have been historically. We can move away from traditional reactive approaches, which merely react in the aftermath of collisions. And we can assume a position where all stakeholders proactively work together to prevent serious collisions through design, changing driver behaviour, changing road user behaviour generally. We can mitigate the risk of people making genuine mistakes and improve the outcome where those mistakes happen. Greater survivability is what we hope to achieve there. Death and serious injury should not be an inevitable consequence of increased community mobility. And I believe, West Yorkshire believes, through partnership working, we can achieve our ambition to achieve zero road deaths. Thank you. I'll hand over to my colleague, Inspector Nick Berry.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Afternoon, everybody. I speak from a Leeds District Policing perspective, and I've been part of the Road Safety Partnership Group now for a number of years. This is an opportunity that we need to grasp in both hands. I think Leeds District and the partners around the table today, to get to this stage, it's been a huge achievement. And we welcome anybody's feedback in relation to any particular issues that local residents or communities have in relation to road safety. What we are doing in Leeds is we are taking a proactive approach to road safety, particularly focusing on those high risk, high harm activities that people can be found doing on the roads. And that is to prevent anybody being killed or seriously injured on the road. Those activities focus around what we call the Fatal Four. You may have heard of those Fatal Four activities, that essentially they are the activities which can cause the most harm to anybody if they're involved in a road traffic collision. Particularly motorists that are not wearing seat belts, using handheld mobile phones. You may be aware that by today, actually, the legislation has changed today to keep up to date with a mobile phone now being used for sending and receiving data, it's no longer just being used to receive text or mobile phone calls. It's a device that can be used to search the internet or take videos. So that legislation has changed today, and it's taken a little bit of time for that to bed in, but we hope to be using that legislation to best effect. Drink and drug driving is the third aspect of the Fatal 4, and particularly the increase that we've seen around drug driving, particularly with younger motorists, and speeding, which obviously has already been mentioned by my colleague Paul there. So that is the focus, that in terms of the police activity in relation to this. I have to say that that is seen as enforcement work. So when we are doing enforcement, obviously that is when other engagement work or educational work hasn't quite worked. So we would use enforcement where those activities were seen to prevent people being killed or seriously injured on the roads in Leeds. I'll hand it back to Councillor Aid.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate your input there. I'm going to invite Gillian now to outline Vision Zero in Leeds and safe system approach and the pillars which form the Vision Zero strategy. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. So I'm just going to run through this quite quickly so that we've got enough time for question and answers. But the Leeds Vision Zero approach, it's not new. It is new for Leeds, but it's not new in the rest of the world. It was adopted in Sweden in 1997 and has had some great, impacts in some of these other cities, and is now a worldwide movement. And as you've heard quite a lot so far, it is a safe systems approach. And a safe system is something that when a person fails, the road system and vehicle technology can drastically reduce traffic-related death and serious injury. So it is about having, a whole system approach so that it can, it's there to protect the vulnerable as much as we can. Next slide, please. So how does this approach differ from what we've been doing? Well, in terms of the guiding principles that we're adopting, we're saying road death and serious injury is not acceptable. We recognise that humans make errors and are vulnerable to injury. So the safe system approach is about everyone is responsible, but those, effectively who can cause the most damage are more responsible. So it is about making sure that there is responsibility on people using our roads. Next slide, please. And in terms of language, it's something, we are having to change the language that we use and recognise that it makes a big difference, actually. So we're now talking about victims, and rather than talking about statistics, because I think, we've been very over the years, statistics is what we base all of our work on, but we really do need to recognise victims. We talk about collisions and crashes and not about accidents, because what we're saying is, these aren't accidents, they are preventable. A lot of them are to do with whether it's driver behaviour or whether it's to do with the design, the speed, but they are preventable. And we're looking at people dying and suffering as a result of these collisions, and we don't want that to happen. So we're also talking about drivers and not vehicles. I think it's been very clear, if you do look at some reports in the media, perhaps it's a BMW driver. I shouldn't pick that one out, but it's the vehicle that's caused the collision, not the person behind the wheel of that vehicle. And we really do need to get the language right. So we are identifying the fact, no, it's a person who was driving inappropriately that caused the crash. Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, this one's a bit small to read, but effectively we have the Vision Zero partnership set up now. The final part of that, I think, in reality, was the member board that's been mentioned already. But we have all the cogs in the wheel there to really, get going and make a big difference in Leeds and across West Yorkshire. We are setting up an expert panel that will be part of the consultation process, but also then going forwards to make sure that we are delivering best practice. And then in terms of our Safer Roads partnership, clearly we've got a strong partnership in place already, but we do have a lot of work to do just to make sure that we're reaching all of the right people. So we do have some way to go, and that is identified within our action plan. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of Vision Zero, we need to be data driven, and we're finding, new ways to find the data. So that we can be more responsive, we can look at causation in more depth, and we've got, in terms of police operations, providing with data like Operation Snap that was mentioned, and we can target our communications. It's a bit creepy, really, I find, but in terms of potentially like Facebook targeting and the like, but we can do things that are much, that do then we are able to meet the target audience that we've identified from the data is required. And we'll be putting in all of these behaviour change campaigns, education. We'll be reviewing infrastructure and the speed limits, as I know it's coming up on a few of the questions, and reporting and funding. So, data is something we really do need to get right. Next slide, please. So mode shift. I think, mode shift is really important, and the transport strategy that we've adopted in Leeds is to be a city where you don't need a car. And what we found during the COVID lockdowns was that the number of KSI killed and seriously injured is that's what it's referring to. But the number of people who were injured in crashes fell in proportion to the amount of traffic on the road. And therefore, we do know that actually it's really important that we deliver our transport strategy and get more people travelling actively, and that by doing that, we will also assist with the Vision Zero target. So I think they're all very interlinked. So we've got the transport strategy, Vision Zero, and we've also got the wider aims around the climate emergency. So if we achieve mode shift, we will certainly achieve, or we need to achieve mode shift to achieve Vision Zero. Next slide, please. And in terms of monitoring, evaluation and learning, so we have been reporting the road safety position to Scrutiny Board for the last few years now, and we will continue to do so to make sure that we are accountable. We also have an annual report which will be going to the Chief Highways Officer. We're reviewing all of our processes and implementing the recommendations and learning from others. So we do need to get out and hear from others who've already implemented Vision Zero in terms of what's working well in their areas. And also, we're here to listen to you too. So, we do want to be able to bring in evidence and information that's relevant to Leeds. And this is it, really. This is our safe system approach. We have the 5 pillars. So they're safe speeds, safe roads, safe vehicles, safe behaviours and people, and post-collision learning and care. And underneath each of those pillars, we've got our strategic objectives and overarching aims, and then they come out into our action plan at the end. Next slide, please. So just looking at each of the pillars in turn, so safe behaviours and people, we've heard about the fatal 4, but these are the, basically the biggest reasons that we get death and serious injury in Leeds, well, across the country, really. And the fatal 4, so it's about speeding, drink and drugs, seat belts, threats and distraction. And I'm just being distracted at the moment because my phone's ringing, so sorry about that. But you know, the fatal four, we do still need to target those, and again, it's about the evidence, it's about the information, the data. Public health and education. Again, public health, we've got someone from public health on the panel today, but it is important that the messages are, or that it's not just the messages, but the actual, you know, Vision Zero is wider than a highways and transportation service and the police service. It's much wider than us for implementation, and it does have to be cross council, but it also has to be across Leeds, so it has to go into businesses, the public, and everything. And indeed, changing attitudes and behaviours is the we need to make the fatal four as antisocial as things, you know, change. I mean, change. I was going to say is drink driving, but unfortunately, that is one of the fatal four. But you know, in terms of areas that we've made real progress on, but we haven't got there yet. But we do need to make change to attitudes and behaviours, and speed is one of those that I think, you know, it's not antisocial enough for people to exceed the speed limit, and we need to change that and make sure that within our city that we get to that point, and clearly raising awareness of this strategy. Sorry, next slide, please. So safe speeds, speed kills, definitely. So we need to lower speed. Lower speeds will lead to, if there are crashes, will lead to reduced severity of outcome. Design of infrastructure. So we need to make sure, again, we need to look at passive safety in infrastructure. We need to look at vehicle technology to limit speed, and yes, there's a question mark there, but I think that's more to do with the fact, you know, there are areas where we need to lobby rather, because we can't do it all ourselves. So it's about getting that requirement in for speed limiters within vehicles. Behaviour change and enforcement as well. Next slide, please. And then safe vehicles, again, roadworthy vehicles on our roads. We need vehicles and vehicle manufacturers to ensure that people are protected both inside and outside the vehicle. And again, this issue of in-vehicle technology. So we've got the potential, it's there already, it's just not in all cars and other vehicles. And even if it is, people can turn them off at the moment. So it's looking at how we lobby to get this put in as a matter of course. Procuring safe fleets as well, and I think, you know, one of our actions for the early years of the plan is to make sure that Leeds City Council fully gets its own fleet in order. We do want to lead by example, so that's something that we'll be pushing for within our action plan. Next slide, please. And safe roads, so reallocating road space. As I said earlier, it's absolutely necessary that we look at getting people travelling more actively, and the only way we're going to do that is by reallocation of road space. So that's something we're looking at the moment. We need to prioritise the most vulnerable road users, and that's certainly something that the highway code changes has assisted with, and designing out danger where we find it. Next slide, please. So the final pillar then is about post-collision learning and support. So support for victims and those affected, and we are looking at working with charities and facilities available across Leeds to give more support for victims, reviewing our systems and advocating for change. And using technology for justice. So I think it's just, we need to investigate what happened in a collision. We can learn what we could do to stop the same thing happening again. And we've got actions under this pillar within our action plan. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we're now on to the question and answer session. So I shall hand back over to Councillor Hayden to chair that session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian. That was excellent. Thank you. So we've got some questions, and there have been. Thank you to Lindsay and Gary and Nick that have been answering the questions in the chat. And we've got questions in the question and answer as well. That also a couple have been answered already. So. There's an interesting one about, well, they're all interesting, but from Alan Hiscock on how this will make Vision Zero will make it safer for horses and their riders, especially with the recent highway code changes. So I'm not sure who would answer that in terms of, because yeah, so I don't know who wants to take that one.
Councillor Hayden, I'm happy to pick this up.
Thank you, Lindsay.
We've had some really good conversations with Alan recently, and we hope that they'll continue. The Close Pass initiative and also Operation Snap, and maybe Paul can help pick up on this, are really integral, and we'd want to work together with local riders and yourself and any other organisations that represent horse riders to try and reduce those incidents. And it's also about the education to drivers so that they understand what the issues are when you're a vulnerable road user, and how dangerous and unsafe that can feel. So maybe pass it over to Paul just to pick up on Close Pass, if that's all right. Sorry, Operation Snap.
Yeah, of course. It's a really good point. Currently, about 1% of our submissions from the public to Operation Snap come from horse riders. Some of those pieces of footage that have been submitted are alarming, to say the least, and extremely dangerous, and have resulted in action against the drivers concerned. This is as much about influencing driver behaviour through having an enforcement capability which is robust, but perhaps more about messaging. We aren't going to achieve awareness of the changing provisions within the Highway Code overnight. But I think one of the strengths in Leeds is that we've got a really good basis on which to embark on effective communications, which, as Gillian's already alluded to, is often targeted through the use of social media at the group that actually needs to listen. So I see that theme being developed to not just deal with people after the event, you know, when they've committed an offence which has caused danger to a horse rider or cyclist, but actually to have that capability, but potentially to amplify the message from a preventative point of view as a matter of routine, not just once, not just twice, but as a recurrent theme, to ensure that we, over time, reach as many people in the target audience as possible and keep reinforcing the importance of these safety messages and compliance with the new provisions of the code.
Thank you so much. On the Highway Code, we've got a question from Hannah about what are we doing to raise awareness? And I have to say that this has been of the recent changes. So if I just read out her question here. Highway Code changed in January, but walking around Leeds, you wouldn't think it had. How are the council raising awareness of this change and how it works in tandem with Vision Zero? And how can local organising groups help out, which is really useful. Thank you so much, because we really need to do this together in terms of raising awareness, both of Vision Zero and how it. So I'm going to ask our Chief Officer Gary, but we were, before he comes in, we were expecting the Department for Transport to do some pretty serious comms around this. But that hasn't happened because obviously these changes came from the Department of Transport. So I'll ask Gary to help us out there. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Yes, as you say, I think things are starting to come out of Department for Transport now, which we are linking into, and Gillian's team and Lindsay's team will be making links and putting things out on the websites and using our Connecting Leeds brands that hopefully a lot of people on the call will recognise, which we are using to push out communications. But we very much in the hands here of wanting DFT, Department for Transport, to do a lot of national publicity on this. This is a major change, and we do need them to really push as much as possible. In terms of the hierarchical point that's been made, there's a lot of work being done by transport planning colleagues to actually look at individual lengths of road and actually determine that hierarchy, so that that can feed into our work going forward. That's a massive piece of work, looking at every, if you like, every link across the city, and not just in the city centre, but across the city as a whole. So it will all link in. So it really is a massive topic, Vision Zero, and I think some of the questions and chat that's coming out proves that. So, but I hope that covers a specific point here about highway code. We do need to continue to talk to DFT and make sure they're putting enough resources into this too.
Thank you. And can I introduce Finn Campbell, please, if you'd like to answer.
I think that's come from the ITB team, Councillor
Oh,
Hayden.
right, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. It's just
says he wants to answer it. So I thought.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to we've had a couple of questions here. I know that David Lum was asking questions in the chat about rolling out of all residential areas becoming 20 miles an hour. And then Bill Walton, there's a question in here about 24-hour speed limits are necessary, but speed enforcement is a huge issue, and about the cameras being in place and fixed penalties. So on the issue, can we have so obviously I'll ask maybe it's Gary again, or if somebody else wants to answer about why we cannot simply implement a definition about the problems of implementing. Nick Hunter, you might want to come in on this, and then enforcement, which will be, I think, the police, if Nick Berry, Inspector Nick Berry, or Paul Jeffrey could answer that as well, please.
Yeah, there's some really good. I'll let Nick come in perhaps on some of the detail around the 20s, but we have been rolling this out for a number of years now, and I think in the chat Nick has said that we are close to completing that rollout across the city. So we're certainly not waiting until 2040 to do that. And in many respects, Leeds is leading the way here on Vision Zero, which is really positive. If I look back at my career, going back a number of decades now, Vision Zero was talked about some time ago, but wasn't really accepted for a whole series of reasons by industry as a whole. But things are now changing rapidly, and I'm pleased to say that Leeds, with Councillor Hayden's support, political support, is pushing this, and so that West Yorkshire will also roll out Vision Zero. So the 20 rollout itself hopefully will be completed in the near future. But that's not the end of the story, and it is just part of the Vision Zero story, which we're trying to get across here. And it's not just about the police doing this or the highway authority. It's about everybody across society, community, partners, businesses playing their role and having those difficult conversations with friends, colleagues, partners about, come on, why are you driving like this? Why aren't you wearing your seatbelt? Because being blunt, we could solve this almost overnight in some respects. The technology exists with speed limiters that could be fitted to cars, could be fitted to the side of the road that force people to stick to speed limits, but that's considered at the moment to be socially unacceptable. So come on, we need to find a way of moving this agenda on. And Vision Zero is a step change in our traditional approaches. But I think we feel very passionate about this. But I'll let Nick come in and explain a bit more about this.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, Leeds took the decision probably about 5 years ago now to actively implement a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across the city on all our residential streets. As Gary's alluded to in the chat, some of these have been really supported by members of the communities, others have been more challenging to get across the line. We are now in the final phase of this approach, which we hope to conclude in the summer months. Building on from that, colleagues in development control now stipulate as part of any new planning application where housing developments are built that they are automatically designed to 20-mile-an-hour standards, and that we promote a 20-mile-an-hour zone within them. So this programme will continue as new developments come forward. Building on the success of some of the 20-mile-an-hour zones as well, Leeds are now starting to implement active travel neighbourhoods, which will hopefully then start to see a change of behaviour in these areas. So we're removing rat runs through communities, we're making it a little bit safer now for communities to be able to walk, cycle and use their neighbourhoods rather than being blighted by antisocial speeding. So I hope that just explains the work that we've done today and the work that we've got planned moving forward.
Thank you very much. David has said overnight tonight would be good. I've learned in my 7 years as being a counsellor, things don't happen as quickly as because, you know, we have to consult with people, which is a good thing, Okay, can I bring in, I don't know whether Paul or Nick, you want to talk about enforcement a little bit there, but as Gary said, it takes it from all of us, and I do quite regularly turn into a kind of citizen on patrol and slow people down by using my own vehicle in our 20-mile-an-hour streets that are surrounded by, in my residential area, and you know, get some hassle from certain drivers, but it is possible as a community to change behaviour. So I don't know who wants to come in on enforcement. Thank you.
Yes, no problem at all. Thanks, Councillor. So I'll talk initially about safety camera enforcement. So the police do enforce using safety cameras on behalf of the West Yorkshire Casualty Prevention Partnership. We use a combination currently of static roadside cameras and mobile enforcement vehicles. Historically, the guidance that we have to work to in this respect has been quite restrictive, and we've been forced to deploy those vehicles at locations where people have died or suffered serious injury, and the criteria was quite restrictive. We think we're on the cusp of seeing a development of the criteria that we've previously laboured under, which will allow us to actually use all the data that's held by local authorities and indeed ourselves as a police force to actually position cameras with a great deal more common sense, in my opinion, to locations which actually maybe haven't had a history of deaths and serious injuries, but because of the data that we hold, we know there's a high risk of that happening. Now, I would much rather invest the time of my staff in the camera enforcement team at those locations in a preventative role, trying to achieve greater speed compliance, than do it after the event. And this is very much the mindset of the partnership. In addition to sort of changing the deployment strategy that I've just tried to outline, there are also advances in technology that give us additional capability. So the partnership is very keen to explore the use of average speed camera enforcement in contrast to the historic use of what we call spot speed. If you install an average speed camera system, that encourages compliance over the full length that's covered by that camera network, and not just encourage people to, well, if I'm being blunt, slam the brakes on when they see a speed camera. So what we're looking at is using the opportunities to use average speed as a means of enforcing speed limits on the strategic road network and the A roads, particularly the ring roads around the major conurbations in West Yorkshire. I'm also pleased to say that the camera partnerships committed to a very significant increase in our mobile speed enforcement capability. So over the next 3 years, we'll be seeing a significant increase in the number of mobile speed enforcement vehicles that we deploy on the roads of West Yorkshire. And that will dovetail nicely with our ambition to move to sites of concern rather than just the historic high-risk sites. So just to give you a sense of context here, West Yorkshire is already very proactive in its use of safety cameras. In 2021, we actually enforced 218,000 offences in terms of speed violation, which is the second highest in the country behind the Metropolitan Police. We can do even more to achieve greater levels of compliance, and I think the reception that our ambitions to make the roads speed safe in West Yorkshire that we've had in Leeds really typifies this new chapter of collaborative working that we're embarking on. Of course, on top of speed cameras, we've got officer-led enforcement. So 218,000 safety camera offences and also well in excess of 50,000 officer-generated offences. We've still got work to do. None of us are complacent around the level of speed compliance. You know, every day on my commute to and from work, I see people driving at inappropriate and dangerous speeds. Enforcement, coupled with education, coupled with partnership working with communities, Operation Snap being a case in point, are all different tactics that we can bring to bear to make the roads a safer place. And Vision Zero is a great vehicle to drive that forward.
Thank you so much. Some really interesting questions, and I know that Lindsay's answering them. And one from Naomi about SUVs. I know that I just want to draw the panel's attention to the chat, and Carl Sargent has asked 3 questions about cyclists, and I'll take this as the last question. Before I do that, I just want to say about potholes and the road markings as well. We do have an app that you can report potholes, and please do so, and they will be picked up by the team. In terms of road markings, do get in contact with Highways or your local councillor if you're worried about where road markings that have been worn down, and we have a programme of refreshing those, because we do want to know where there are potholes and where road markings are, because we want to do something about them. So maybe if somebody could share the links in the chat, or if they could be sent out to people who have joined this call, and it's fantastic to see so many people joining this webinar. That'd be great. So Carl has got 3 questions, and I'll take this as the last one before we go on, about the Safe Pass, how can driver behaviour be changed so that more people are comfortable with cycling. It's fantastic to see more cycle lanes. It's fantastic that you've said that, Carl. That's not always what I get emailed about. That's not always the sentiment that I get emailed about. And about businesses being engaged to encourage more secure storage. And finally, how cyclists can make recommendations or highlight routine safety issues on the bike track. So I'm not sure. I think that will come from somebody at the council there. Well, somebody would like to answer those questions? No takers? Well, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Hayden, is Nick on the call? Could he pick that one up? Or?
Yeah, sorry, I've just unmuted myself. In regards to the close pass concerns, there's various initiatives with the police in regards to Operation Close Pass, and it's an education programme in regards to driver behaviour. It's how we build on that and get that message out to members of the public. It's work that we still have to do, and that will be done by, like I say, behavioural team experts in trying to identify the locations of concern, etc. If you've got a particular location where you've got concerns, please do report them through to myself. I'm more than happy then to look into that to see if there's any immediate improvements that we can make to the betterment of cyclists. We are now following the local guidance that does encourage local authorities to have segregated cycle provision. As you can see behind me, that's an example of a scheme that we've recently built at Ellen Road, where segregated cycle provision has been built. Proud of the team that I work for that's delivered that scheme. I'm just trying to think of what the third question was.
There was one around secure cycle storage, and maybe we could get back to you, like, because there's a lot of work going on with that. So yeah, we could, we'll have your details so we can provide an answer there. But Gillian wants to come in as well.
It was just in relation to, I mean, certainly in terms of secure cycle storage, the influencing travel behaviour team is working with businesses, and certainly through the planning system, it is a requirement that all businesses provide secure cycle storage. But also through the West Yorkshire Travel Plan Network, there's work in terms of trying to improve cycle storage and get grant funding for that, if necessary. I think the other point, just in terms of who can you contact, I think if nothing else, the Vision Zero, if you can use the Vision Zero address that we will put back up right at the end, to contact us, and we will pass that on to the relevant team within transport strategy at Leeds City Council. They may well have their own, but I think for now, if you could use the Vision Zero web address, that would be helpful. And thank you very much. So visionzero@leeds.gov.uk.
Fantastic. Can I just thank everyone for your commitment to this approach, to everyone on the call for their interest and involvement and excellent questions. That was a really, really good discussion. So I'm really, really grateful to you all. So I'll just hand back to Gillian to explain where we go from here and how you can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. So the public consultation is running up until the 24th of April, and you can submit your anything you wish to submit to us through the Commonplace site, which is there, Leeds Safer Roads Vision Zero.commonplace.is. We'll then be taking those consultation responses, reviewing them, making necessary amendments, and hopefully we'll get that adopted this summer through our executive board. But needless to say, we are already working on it. So this is our approach in terms of our Safer Roads partnership meetings. And then I think again we perhaps had the next slide that just showed, oh, we didn't, sorry. So it was that web address I was going to put up again, but it was I know Tam's going to put it up in the chat. So visionzero@leeds.gov.uk. So thank you very much, and yeah, thank you, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you. It's been a really good hour, and we're only 3 minutes over time, so that's fantastic. And I wish everyone a lovely, safe afternoon and weekend, and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you very much.